more than a year doing this, and where's the result? Maybe if I took all the money we spent on this thing and just gave away to a random person, it would have a better return. They say that if you just don't stop, it will eventually work. But if it keeps going like this, it did sound like the $1,000,000 idea and you even thought it was some kind of genius, but in reality, in practice, you wouldn't really put it this way. And that is exactly why you should always test your ideas. But not to discover whether to continue with them or not, but rather to discover how to continue with them. Usually we tend to be quite overconfident about our own concepts, and that is no different even for the most perfectionist figures in history. For instance, Beethoven. Most of his pieces he composed and he thought would be major and were his best work turned out to be not much of a success. However, that overconfidence is actually something fair. After all, we would never put to the world something that we believe is a bad idea. But then how could we test those assumptions to discover if they are actually a good idea and actually something that would work, or we're just delusional? Here we're gonna have a look at what we have been doing for the content strategy of GARAGIQUE. And despite having a really well done research, you might notice that the first tests often come out to be unsuccessful. But even then, you can expect to extract really useful and insightful information from that. The very first thing that you should have defined at this point is what is the goal here. So maybe it's getting 100, 1,000 units sold. Maybe it's closing a very big deal. Or maybe it's getting 10,000 followers. This is what you should have defined here, and this is what will guide you on everything else. And something that you need to have really clear here is what is success for you. Because success will not always mean that you have reached the final destination. Sometimes just by seeing that you're walking towards that goal is enough for you to see that this is the right path and you can continue on that. Later, based on what gave you the best results or what gave you results at all, you should determine what are the changes to be made. So for example, here we noticed that although carousels take the most amount of time to be made, they are not reaching as many people as we were expecting them to reach. So we realized that tweets, single tweets, and reels are performing a lot better, and that way we will be continuing with them and testing new formats within this format. And as obvious as it sounds, quantity will give you data that one single test will not provide. So the more tests you do, the better, of course. As a matter of fact, when people don't see the results, they usually just simply give up. But the interesting thing is that when your GPS says that the destination is on your right and you actually miss it, you just don't turn back and go home. You just recalculate the route. And by testing new approaches and new methods, you're actually testing new routes to reach your destination.